All right, welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Awesome. Today, we're diving into the world of mobility training.
Ooh, yeah, getting those bodies moving better.
Exactly. We've got two techniques we're going to explore today. The T-spine ball smash extension and the diaphragm gut smash.
Wow, those sound pretty intense.
I know, right? But don't worry, our source material is super practical. It's all about getting you to ditch those, boring old stretches and learn some new tricks to unlock your body's full potential. What do you think?
Oh, I'm all about that. These techniques can be real game changers, especially if you've ever felt that nagging stiffness in your upper back.
Oh, tell me about it.
Or you just can't quite take a full breath.
Yes, been there for sure. So let's start with this T-spine ball smash extension.
Okay.
Now, the guide suggests using a double lacrosse ball.
I've seen those.
Or a tool called a Gemini. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, I've heard of those.
Okay, so my question is, why focus on these tiny little points in your back? Why not just, stretch the whole thing out?
Well, think of your spine like a chain, right?
Okay, I'm with you.
Each link is like a motion segment, and if even one link gets stuck, it affects the entire chain's movement.
That makes sense.
So this T-spine ball smash extension, it really targets those individual segments in your upper back.
Interesting. Okay. So, I've tried foam rolling my upper back.
Yeah.
But I never seem to get to those, really deep knots.
Right.
Is that where this plate variation comes in?
Exactly. Foam rolling's great for general muscle tension.
Yeah.
But for those stubborn restrictions, you need something more targeted pressure.
I see.
And that's where the weight plate becomes your best friend. We're talking about lying on your back with that double lacrosse ball strategically placed on those stiff segments.
Gotcha.
And then you hug a 45-pound weight plate to your chest.
Whoa, okay, hugging a weight plate, that's new. Then what?
Then the magic happens.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
You slowly and carefully roll from side to side, letting the weight of the plate press into that lacrosse ball, really zeroing in on those tight spots. You'll feel it.
It sounds intense. Why a 45-pound plate, though? Could you not just use your own body weight?
Well, you could.
Okay.
But for serious athletes or people with, really ingrained stiffness, body weight alone might not be enough to make a real difference.
Right.
The plate adds that extra oomph to really unlock those restrictions, and it brings your ribs into the equation, too.
Wait, the ribs, how are they connected to all this T-spine mobility stuff?
Well, your ribs attach to the thoracic spine, right?
Okay, yeah.
So when they're restricted, it can actually pull on your upper back, leading to that stiff, hunched-over feeling.
Oh, wow.
So by mobilizing the ribs with this plate smash, you're essentially unlocking your upper back, allowing for better posture and movement.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Now, the guy also mentions a variation using a med ball.
Yes.
Would that be better for someone who's not quite ready for the intensity of a plate?
Absolutely. The med ball provides similar benefits, but with less intensity. Think of it as a stepping stone.
Gotcha. A stepping stone to the plate. Okay, so we've smashed our upper backs, but let's move on to another crucial area that often gets overlooked, the diaphragm.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Now, you might be thinking, what does my breathing muscle have to do with mobility? But trust me, this is a game changer. We're going to learn all about the diaphragm gut smash.
It might sound intimidating.
A little bit, yeah.
But it's actually a really controlled and accessible way to release tension in this oftentimes overlooked muscle.
Okay, that's good to hear.
Yeah, we don't often realize how much tension we hold in our diaphragms.
Oh, that's true.
And it can manifest in some pretty surprising ways.
Interesting. Okay, so I'm definitely guilty of, holding my breath without realizing it.
Yeah.
Especially when I'm stressed.
Totally.
So how does smashing your diaphragm actually work?
So the guide outlines two methods, both using props like a box or a chair to position your body. One method has you leaning over the edge of the box with a ball positioned right at the border of your rib cage.
I'm trying to picture that.
Yeah. And then you use your breath and body weight to sink into the ball, releasing tension as you exhale.
Okay, that makes sense. What's the other method?
The other one is lying on your back with the ball positioned under your rib cage.
Okay.
It's a bit gentler, but still effective.
Okay, so I noticed the guide mentions a bunch of different tools. Alpha ball, supernova, even a softball.
Yeah, there are a lot of options.
Which one should we grab? Does it depend on, your body type or how much tension you have?
That's a good question. Choosing the right tool comes down to like personal preference and how much tension you're carrying.
Okay.
So a softball is a great starting point because it provides broader pressure.
Okay.
But as you get more comfortable, you can try a firmer option like an alpha ball or supernova for a more targeted release.
Gotcha. So they each have a different purpose.
Yeah.
Now, the guide also emphasizes breathing throughout these techniques. Is that just for relaxation, or is there something more to it?
It's definitely more than just relaxation. Remember, the diaphragm is our primary breathing muscle.
Right.
So actively engaging it during these techniques helps to retrain its proper function.
Right.
One technique the guide recommends is the contract and relax method.
Okay, I've heard of that.
So you imagine pressing into the ball as you inhale deeply. Then you hold your breath for a second.
Okay.
And then slowly exhale, letting the ball sink deeper into your diaphragm.
Okay, so you're really working that muscle.
Exactly.
Now, I also noticed that the guide mentions incorporating twisting movements during the diaphragm smash.
Right, yeah.
What's the reason for that?
Those twists are important because tension in your diaphragm isn't just front to back. It can happen side to side as well. So by twisting, we're ensuring a more complete release and improving the overall function.
So it's not just lying there, you're actually moving.
Exactly. There's active movement involved.
I'm starting to get a feel for all this, but can you walk us through each of these techniques in a bit more detail?
Absolutely. Let's do it. Absolutely. Yeah. Let's rewind back to that T-spine ball smash extension, particularly the plate variation.
Yes. Let's break that down a bit more. I'm all about getting those stubborn knots out. But I have to admit, using a 45-pound weight, it does sound pretty intense.
It can be, but it's so effective. Remember those motion segments we talked about?
Yeah.
Okay, so picture this. You're lying on your back, and you've got that double lacrosse ball or the Gemini nestled right between your shoulder blades, right on those stiff segments.
Okay, got it.
And then you're hugging that 45-pound weight plate to your chest.
Okay, I'm hugging the weight plate. What happens next?
That's when the release happens. You slowly and carefully roll from side to side, just letting the weight of that plate press into the lacrosse ball, really targeting those tight spots.
I bet you can really feel it.
You can. It makes a huge difference. And the added weight is key, especially for those really deep knots.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you were saying how it brings your ribs into the equation too.
It does. For athletes or anyone with like really deep stiffness, body weight just might not be enough. The plate adds that extra force to create some lasting change. And like I said, it gets those ribs involved. That's where things get really interesting.
Right, you mentioned the ribs before, but why are they so important for T-spine mobility? I'm not really seeing the connection.
Well, think about it this way. Your ribs attach directly to your thoracic spine.
Right, okay, yeah.
So when your ribs are restricted, it can pull on your upper back, which can lead to that kind of stiff, hunched over feeling that so many people experience.
Oh, interesting.
So by mobilizing the ribs with the plate smash, you're essentially unlocking your upper back, which allows for better posture, better movement.
Wow, I never realized how connected everything is. Okay, so the plate variation is for those more intense cases. What about the med ball variation that the guide talks about? Is that a better option if you're not quite ready for that intensity?
Exactly. The med ball provides similar benefits, but it's definitely less intense. So it's a great stepping stone if you're not quite ready for the plate or if you just want a gentler approach.
Got it. Okay, so we've thoroughly smashed our upper backs. Now let's move on to that other vital area we were talking about, the diaphragm. I have to say, the idea of smashing my diaphragm still makes me a little nervous.
I totally get it. It sounds a lot more intimidating than it actually is. The diaphragm gut smash is really about releasing tension in this often overlooked muscle. Using targeted pressure and specific movements. It's not about force, it's about a mindful release.
Okay, good to know. So the guide talks about two methods. One using something elevated like a box or a chair, and the other is done on the ground. What's the difference between the two?
They're both aimed at releasing tension.
Okay.
But the elevated position allows for kind of deeper, more focused pressure. So you're basically draping yourself over the edge of the box or the chair with the ball positioned right at the border of your rib cage.
Right.
Then you use your breath and body weight to sink into the ball and release the tension as you exhale.
I can picture that. What about the ground method?
The ground method, you're lying on your back with the ball under your rib cage. It's a gentler approach, but still very effective. And both of them, you're really using your breath to deepen that release.
Right. Okay, now speaking of tools, the guide mentions quite a few different ones. We've got the alpha ball, the supernova, even just a simple softball. How do we know which tool to use?
Yeah, good question. So choosing the right tool really comes down to personal preference and how much tension you're carrying. So like a softball is a good place to start. It provides that broader pressure. As you get more comfortable, you can progress to a firmer tool like the Alpha Ball or the Supernova for a more targeted release.
Okay, so there's a progression. Interesting. Now, the guide emphasizes the importance of breathing throughout these techniques. It's not just about relaxation, right?
Right. It's definitely more than just relaxation. Remember, the diaphragm is our primary breathing muscle. So we're really engaging it actively during these techniques to help retrain its proper function.
Yeah, that makes sense.
One method the guide recommends is the, contract and relax technique. So you inhale deeply, hold your breath for a second, and then exhale fully, just allowing the ball to sink deeper into the muscle.
Like we're really giving our diaphragm a deep tissue massage.
Exactly.
Now, the guide also mentions incorporating twisting during the diaphragm gut smash.
Right.
What's the purpose of that?
Yeah, those twists are super important because tension in your diaphragm isn't just front to back.
Okay.
It can also be side to side.
I see.
So those twists help to ensure a more complete release, and they really improve overall function.
So it's not just lying there. There's actual movement involved.
Exactly. There's active movement.
I'm really starting to get how these techniques go beyond basic stretching. We're not just lengthening muscles here. We're targeting specific points to release tension and restore that proper function.
Exactly. It's like detective work for your body,
Well, I like that.
You're identifying the root causes of the discomfort.
Right.
And then using these targeted techniques to address them head on.
I love that. Now, we've been talking about specific techniques for the upper back and diaphragm, but I'm wondering, are there other areas of the body that could benefit from this kind of approach?
That's a great question. You know those trigger points we mentioned?
Yeah, those super tender spots.
Yeah, those knots.
Yeah.
They can show up anywhere in the body.
Oh, that's true.
And they cause pain, limited movement, and we can use a similar approach to address those too.
So this whole concept of targeted pressure and release can be applied to other areas as well.
Absolutely. Think about your hips, for example. They can get so tight, especially with all the sitting we do.
Oh, tell me about it.
And tight hips can lead to all sorts of problems, from low back pain to knee problems.
Yeah, I've definitely felt that. So what kind of techniques can we use to target those areas?
Well, there are things like hip flexor releases. They use tools like lacrosse balls or foam rollers to target those tight spots.
Okay.
Again, it's not just about stretching. It's about releasing those deeper restrictions that are limiting your movement.
This is fascinating. It's like a whole new way of thinking about mobility.
Yes.
And it sounds like we've only just scratched the surface.
We have, and that brings us to the exciting part, exploring these other areas, unlocking even more potential for movement and well-being.
Okay, so we've smashed those T-spines and we've given our diaphragm some love.
And don't forget those hips.
That's right. We even touched on those a bit.
Yeah.
But are there other kind of often neglected areas that we could be giving this kind of attention to?
Yeah, it's fascinating. This approach, using that focused pressure and active engagement to address these points of tension, it can really be applied to so many areas.
Okay.
It's all about understanding how your body moves as a whole and identifying those spots that need that extra love.
Right. It's like we're becoming body detectives.
Exactly.
Uncovering those hidden restrictions that are holding us back.
And you're empowered to take control of your own mobility.
That's so important.
You don't have to rely on anyone else to fix you.
I love that.
Yeah.
So any other areas come to mind?
Well, we talked about the hips, but let's think about those deep hip flexors.
Oh, yeah.
Those get so tight from sitting all day.
All the time.
Releasing those can make a huge difference. How you move, how you feel.
Yeah, tight hips are a constant struggle for me. So how do we tackle those deep hip flexors?
So there are specific techniques that use targeted pressure, similar to what we talked about with the T-spine and the diaphragm.
Okay.
You can use a lacrosse ball or foam roller to apply pressure to those tight spots, working through the muscles.
So again, it's not just about stretching. It's about releasing those deeper restrictions, like we're getting to the root of the problem.
Exactly. You got it.
Wow, this is amazing. It's like a whole new approach to mobility.
It really is. And the best part is it's accessible for everyone. You don't need fancy equipment or a trainer. You can start exploring these techniques at home.
That's awesome. Well, this has been such an eye-opening deep dive. I feel like I've learned so much about how my body works and how to take care of it.
Me too.
And to our listeners, we leave you with this thought. What area of your body are you most curious to explore further? What's holding you back?
Yeah, don't be afraid to get curious, experiment, and find what works for you.
Your body will thank you.
It will.
And that's a wrap for this deep dive into the world of targeted mobility training.
We did it.
We hope you learned something new and that you're feeling inspired to unlock your own movement potential.
Absolutely.
Until next time, happy exploring.